Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next GRIP webinar, which is the Chief Event Officer's Playbook, How to Create Transformational Events. So I've got some amazing panelists with me today, but it's all about the rapidly evolving event landscape, do you want to be a standard event organizer? No one wants to be a standard event organizer. We want to live in the future where we've got incredible events that are engaging, that are transforming and delivering real outcomes for like impact, for revenue, for engagement. And my three panelists today are some of the best in the business at doing that. So I am going to introduce them, get them out of the hungry caterpillar apple, turn them into a beautiful butterfly from a chrysalis, and we're going to transform live across this webinar in 45 minutes. So we have got Sasha Frieze. She is the author of the book that this webinar is named after, the Chief Event Officer. If you haven't got a copy, go and get one from Amazon and all good bookshops. And we also have Zach Butler. He is the EMEA General Manager at HumanX. And we have the amazing Abby Cannon, Senior Strategic Account Manager at Grip. So I'm going to go to each of you and get you to do a bit of an intro about who you are and why transformational events are important to you. So Sasha, over to you first.
Thanks so much, Hugh. Absolutely brilliant to be here. So my name's Sasha Frieze. I'm an event strategy consultant and the author, as you mentioned, of the Chief Event Officer's Playbook, which was just published at the end of last year and amazingly became a bestseller on Amazon in the US and the UK. And really, what I'm absolutely fascinated about, is leveraging my 30 years of event industry experience across, trade show companies, associations, media owners, is creating transformation events that really change things. And I am delighted to be here. I'm very excited.
We are excited to have you as well. Zach, over to you. Can you do us a bit of an intro about you, please?
Yep. Thanks, Hugh. Thanks, Abby. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here. I'm Zach. I've been working in events for 15 years now. Done a bit of everything. Started in a sales role in very niche oil and gas conferences. Then moved into technology events maybe for the last 12 years or so. Always focused around emerging technologies, innovation, particularly around startup ecosystems. Been over here in Amsterdam for the last 4 years now. And I would say, I think as every corner of my career has evolved around the kind of, I would say, non-conforming. I really hate traditional paths, and I think transformation in events. There's a lot of it, where there's kind of building blocks, but I think the real fun stuff comes from doing things differently and challenging yourself. So it's something that I think about every day.
Thank you very much. Good to have you, Zach. And Abby, over to you.
Hello, everybody. So some of you, I'm sure, will know me as your account manager at Grip, but I've worked in events for about 18 years, started in academic events, moved into trade shows, worked for Slido during its early phase, and then have sort of flip-flopped between organizer in innovation at Reed and then event tech again, obviously at Grip. And I absolutely love the idea that we can get the most out of events using event tech. So not tech for tech's sake, but where it can help with that sort of transformational journey, which we're going to talk about later, and how you can use it to your best advantage.
Great. Thank you very much. Lovely to have you three here. And I'm Hugh, as always, SVP of Marketing at Grip, and I'm going to be your host. Right, we've got a treat for you. Sasha's put together a special presentation all about transformational events. She is going to share her slides. I'm going to stop sharing mine. Oh, look at that. Seamless. Wow. Virtual events is the future. No, it's not. It's about in-person events. That's what we love. And that's why we are here today to sing the gospel of why you need to be the chief event officer and why you need this playbook. So if you do want the slides, Sasha's slides, let us know and we can send those to you. But Sasha, it's over to you. The stage is yours.
That's great. Thank you so much. So I am here to just share with you a handful of ideas as really a starting point for conversation, between the four of us about the different kinds of techniques and kind of real case studies about how people create transformational events. And my underlying idea is that, events are a powerful tool for changing the world. We all spent a long time in lockdown on what a client of mine calls Zoom and crisps. And I think that whilst there may be occasional reasons for doing that, there is something really powerful about live events, especially in the kind of misinformation, disinformation world. Live events are where trust really is. Now, I published the book in November, and it's kind of synthesizing ideas from my career and the huge amount of research I did. But it's really looking at events in 5 different areas. And I'm guessing that there are people on the call today from a variety of, corporates, associations, trade shows and conferences, media owners, government, policy. And there are 4 key transformational questions. So this book, this is a why-to rather than a how-to. There's a lot of great books out there about the logistics of events. I take event operations excellence absolutely for granted. I think if all event professionals were running the world, we may well not be in the mess we're in now. We are people who solve problems and make things happen. I'm taking that for granted, and I want to take a step back and just look under the hood and understand why we do things. So before we even get to any operational questions, I want to be saying 4 key things. Why are you doing the event? Who's it for? What is the event design? Not the venue plan and the layout, but what are you actually creating? And crucially, what's the intended impact? Events are nothing without the impact that they make, and aligning those events with your organization's objectives. So this is the event transformation blueprint, your 10-step look at the 10 key questions. What's the transformation? What's the journey you're going to take your clients or guests on? What's the core purpose of your event? Then you look at who are the stakeholders. Like, I know from the questions ahead of the session, there were some questions about marketing, mapping your market and understanding who they are, understanding what the messaging is and what the strategies are. Then you get to the what. Content is crucial. But what is the experience? How do we design the experience outside of the content? How do we get the welcome right? We had a beautiful welcome here from Hugh, headlined with exactly why we're here to gather. I often see people do it brilliantly. I occasionally see people miss opportunities. And then those impact questions are about what are the outcomes, what are you measuring? Is it about ROI? Is it about revenue? Is it about relationships? What is it about? And crucially, how do you align the conversation about the event around the boardroom table? I'm really encouraging people to take on that chief event officer mindset and move, and up-level the conversation. If you stay operational, no one gets promoted for knowing how many croissants to order. So I'm just going to pick out a couple of themes from the book as a precursor to conversation. So I'm guessing many of you are familiar with the hero's journey. Luke Skywalker starts off in his ordinary world, and then he has a challenge, and he kind of comes back, and he goes on that whole journey where he returns, in that magical way. And what I've done is take the idea of the hero's journey, like a really powerful narrative tool of like every major blockbuster movie we've ever seen. And one of the ideas in the book is the participant's hero's journey. And this is about a really crucial idea, which I'm really looking forward to talking to you guys about putting the participant at the heart of the experience. So it starts off with that call to adventure, all that, you're in your regular work, but then you get lots of marketing, often quite a lot of email, but lots of different kinds of marketing, and you engage and you register for the event. But then the welcome is all your exploration, the welcome sequence you get, from the show owner, but all that excitement. Then the transformation, the thing that changes you, is the gathering, all the things that happen there, and that the participant returns, to their regular world with a fulfilling career, personal achievement, lasting transformation, continued connections. We talk a lot about networking at events, energized and inspired. So this is an idea, I'd love you guys to take away, and there's a QR code at the end if you want to download these, but also to start thinking about how are our events different when we have this thinking. So another idea, Abby and I were talking about this, is the kind of market mapping. And so I believe that doing this exercise as a team is super powerful. You know, on the top left, you've got your buy side, your delegates. On the top right, your sell side, your sponsors. Bottom right, the media, you know, which is all your markets media influencers. And so the two sort of, you know, the audience and market media, your marketing people love as a tool. The sponsor mapping is brilliant for salespeople. And those must-haves, the VIPs, they're the people who've got to be in the room for the conversation to happen. Just to show you how it might look, here is an example from, you know, a market. I've done quite a bit of stuff in healthcare. This was pediatric emergency healthcare. So mapping it out, and actually this is quite a simple one. You know, the really complex ones, I mean, it'll be interesting to talk about your show, Zach, and how you sort of map your market, but I imagine it's way more complex than this. So that's an idea about mapping the market. And then another idea around marketing, you know, people talk a lot about the marketing funnel, taking people through this like awareness, consideration, desire, action. But I increasingly think that marketing is actually turning into a marketing loop, that people have an ongoing and returning relationship with us. So we demonstrate our value, people get insights, but you're moving to kind of advocacy. Like that advocacy piece is so cool, the word of mouth and retention. You know, what we really want, you know, there's the Freeman research that came out just at the beginning of this year, talks about 30% retention in a lot of events. Well, that's pretty shocking. That means you know, every single show for a repeat event, you're having to get another 70% new people. And that's something, you know, we might want to explore. Many of you will recognize this model, that the content, the talent, the speakers are at the heart of how event markets flow together. And it seems to me that content is absolutely vital. I'm not a great believer in the old chalk and talk, but I think I differentiate hard content, you know, which is ideas led, soft content, which can be people and conversation led. And increasingly, I see trends, you know, towards those softer ideas, one-to-one meetings, you know, brain dates, those kind of activities. And I love, you know, we live in a TV media world, right? We can all watch Netflix. The old days of, you know, 40-minute sessions, one person standing up, that's all over. We need to keep event design, and content design needs a cadence. We want that energy to keep people excited. I love these models that break the fourth wall, the unconference, the fishbowl, where it's a panel in a circle and one person moves out and another person comes in. It keeps the content conversation going, and that can be really powerful. Big conversations about, you know, the balance of content and networking. I think, you know, content itself is really a powerful connecting tool. And so this matrix model, you know, you would get those transformational events in that top right hand corner where you get the maximum learning and insight, but also brilliant conversations. You know, in the other quadrants, obviously bottom left hand corner, like, why are you even doing an event? But just knowledge or just networking is not that secret sauce that's really going to change people, organizations and sectors. So those are just some of the ideas that I am really, you know, happy to share with you. You're very welcome to sign up to my newsletter, and there's lots of consulting options and coaching and training options. Connect with me on LinkedIn. And the big question that I really want people to go away with about this is, you know, how do our events best, how do we create events that help us deliver our bigger purpose? That's the real board level conversation. And so I really encourage everybody here to join the Chief Event Officer movement, like speak the language of the boardroom, elevate your own career, but create those events aligned with organizational objectives. And I encourage you to say, I am the Chief Event Officer, and take, this is a little mini pit stop tour of some of the ideas as a start of conversation, but you are welcome to download these slides and explore further. And I'm really open to kind of taking these ideas further and talking about events and transformation.
Thank you very much, Sasha. That was a whistle-stop tour, and I can definitely recommend your email newsletter. It's fantastic. It's really, really good. So I would check that out and subscribe to that if I was you, as well as buying the book, obviously. That's where the money is. Right, let's talk quickly about a message from our sponsor. So we're going to quickly change gears just to talk about the most important thing in the world, and that's me, because I've got another webinar coming up. So before anyone shoots off at the end, I've got another QR code for you to scan. Scan that one, 19th of February. So it's coming up soon, and we've got the new meeting revolution, why meetings are becoming the number one growth driver for events. I've got two great speakers. I've got Sophie, who used to be the ex-global president of Shop Talk, and we all know Shop Talk pioneered meetings with all these hundreds of meetings tables in a big room. And so it's content plus meetings, which Sasha, you were talking about. It's bringing those two things together. And we've also got Nadira as well from Clarion. She's one of the top marketing people there, working on some big shows like The Gathering. So they're going to be talking about meetings and why meetings are huge at the moment, particularly pre-scheduled meetings as well, and why we're seeing this whole thing around connections over content. Because like you're saying, Sasha, people are used to just being on Netflix and watching everything online now. And if they want to see a keynote speaker, they can just watch it online, find it on Google, on YouTube. Why do they need to then go to an actual live event? It's about what we're talking about today. It's about transformational events that are giving you the content, but also the connections, the networking, so we can turn your events into a beautiful butterfly. Right. While people are scanning that QR code and signing up for our next webinar, we want to ask Zach the first question. Sasha, you give me loads of questions off the back of this. I think the first thing that hit me, and I want to ask Zach, is around this intended impact. So Zach, for your shows, when do you start with these things? Do you define what the intended impact is? Because obviously, I'm guessing you've got different audiences. An impact for one sponsor's different to a different exhibitor, different to an attendee. So, can you kind of unpack that how you actually do it at your events in the real world, please?
Yeah. Thanks, Sasha, for the whistle stop. I mean, I would say, yeah, I think especially in a technology ecosystem where you've got 1,001 different ecosystem players, I think everyone will have a slightly different nuanced intended impact for engagement with the event, and we also have to acknowledge that. But I think if you can take a step back and as a business or as a brand, consider what your intended impact for the market. So in our case at HumanX, so we're an executive forum for around AI and for AI builders and AI adopters. And our intended impact is actually to reduce the noise in this space and to actually help businesses work out what the hell they're doing with all this AI that's floating around the world to actually create real transformation. And so there are 1,000 different objectives that people are having when they're coming to our event. But if we're doing one thing, it's that, and in some way that connects back to everything that every reason why someone comes. In my previous business, I was running a Dutch media business called The Next Web, where I met Abby and you 3 or 4 years ago, which was super fun. And it was an early stage startup event. So we had a very, very specific impact, which was we wanted startups to succeed. And if a startup could grow and become, a known name, a household name, a unicorn, we felt like we'd played one, a little slice in helping them do that, and part of our kind of marketing was to help showcase those great stories, and then they used to kind of drag us along with them because we'd be then, seen to be as just part of that journey of scaling startups. So it was a much more of a functional intended impact, I'd say.
Although I think that scaling startups idea, I mean, to me, it's more than functional. What you're saying is we want to help create the market we're in. And I think that is really powerful. You're not, one of the interesting things about the trade show model is, are you a service provider to the market? And there, you can do okay, but when you're really in the market, when you are saying, we are going to get our big speakers, our core clients, we're going to help them scale and we're going to help them be unicorns. You're part of the ecosystem, not the owner of the ecosystem, and that is the real sweet spot actually for transformation.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think emerging technologies. I've spent most of my career in this market, so I can only talk. I'm not saying that other markets aren't like this, but emerging technologies have a very special space because it's a very much an ecosystem play, and often there's a lot of money, a lot of venture capital money being kind of sprayed around to try and find where markets are growing. And often what I found is that even leading companies are looking for an authority to help guide them on their growth journey. And yeah, you're right. What an event, what a successful kind of tier one event does is it becomes an authority in itself because of the voices and the people that are able to convene to share a common message.
I mean, at Grip, Abby, we talk about ecosystem events, don't we? And you've got a lot of those as your own clients. So, how do you help your clients understand what the intended impact is from a kind of, platform point of view? Because there's probably multiple different objectives right at the start, and you kind of got to showcase at the end that you've delivered on it. Because if you don't have a baseline at the beginning, how can you say that the event's been a success or it has transformed?
Yeah, I think when we think about ecosystem events, we do think about these more very large scale, almost trade show, but these sort of complex style events. I think from what Sasha was saying before, when you look at conferences, there is a sort of start and a middle and an end, and you go on that journey together. Whereas with these ecosystem events, everybody's coming at it for a different purpose, and it's about making sure that you're tailoring what's going on to all of those needs, which is where I think that sort of stakeholder mapping comes in really nicely for those ecosystem events. Because if you can map out who's coming and why they're coming and why you need them there is the biggest one. And then what they want to get out of it, then all of a sudden that now you can start tailoring those individual journeys and help them get to what they want. And obviously, I mean, I mean, for those of you who know Grip, I mean, that's what the tech does. It's kind of permissions based on who's doing what and being able to target those people in a way that works for them. So you don't allow the VIPs to be contacted by all the really early stage startups because they're going to get fed up, and equally, but you want to bring the early stage startups towards those sort of the venture capitalists. So it really is, that mapping is so important with these ecosystem events. We've got a very good blog about ecosystem events and a deck which we can share afterwards actually on how to
So,
think about them.
Sasha, you've in your time you've probably consulted some of these events, and they don't know what their intended impact is. If you come across issues where events have been a bit muddled and you've helped to really help them understand why they exist in the first place?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the pieces of work that I do is that I go in when people's events are broken and I run a kind of big stakeholder workshop, and we say, well, what's not working here and what's going on? And one of the things that I sometimes see is that people can get in a habit of saying, oh, we just got out last year's event and we tweaked it. And so that's going to get you so far, but it's not going to really respond to the market. And so those really serious ecosystem tier one events, they are doing rigorous research. They're talking to all their different participants. They're mapping that market. And there's also that piece about journeys as well. I really like a kind of persona mapping exercise because, your market map might be enormous and there might be hundreds of different categories, but actually there's going to be a few core personas who want a different journey. And for those big shows, if you're in a conference of a few hundred people, I mean, I spoke at Rain Focus Insights in Utah last week. It was 500 people. It's a great size. By the end of the 2 days, I honestly felt like I've met everybody. Now, that's not true when you're at a tier one. I mean, how many people are at HumanX?
6,000.
Right. So when you're at HumanX with 6,000 people, it's really hard to meet the right people and to map your journey through the show. I mean, I'm curious to know what you guys do, but I mean, one of the things that I really like to do is to map all those different personas and work out journeys that you can go through. And I've seen people do this a few different ways. I've seen people do a little cohort gathering. So in the app or when you register, you can say, hey, I'm a first timer and I want to meet by the coffee stand and have a little tour. I'm a trustee of the British Society for Haematology, and they do a really cute thing at their annual, basically a medical event with lots of trade shows, which is you can do a tour round all the stands and you meet a cohort of people there, you have conversations, but you're also guided around the show floor, which people really like. I saw something, it was in the vet sector, which is quite a competitive sector. But one of the trade shows there did quite a cool thing on the front of the website. They said, who are you? Are you a vet? Are you a clinical director? Are you a vet nurse? Are you in a corporate? And so they had 5 or 6 different, effectively, personas. And then by clicking on that right on the front page, it guided you through the website, so you found the stuff you need. So I think those are some of the kind of tools I've seen. I'm really curious to know how you do it, Zach, at HumanX.
I'd actually start one step back, which is actually mapping the money of a market.
Right.
I think as any event organizer, we are embedded in an ecosystem, but we are not the market. So we need to understand as much as we can about the market. And with any new event, this is one of the things when I was 17, starting working in events, that was like drilled into me, is like understand the money movements. Because most events are not just a straight, a buyer and a seller. Obviously, there is elements of that, but there are dependencies of markets, and they change over time. So mapping the money movements, you really, I think, allows us to spot where we can have commercial impact. So impact also for us. I've always worked in commercial events. Events are a fantastic way to make money, as lots of Grip's clients are, but they're also a fantastic way to convene and great impact. So I think that's the first thing. And then also that changes over years. So any I think tier 1 event would be an evergreen event. So I think gone are the days of like launching events in hypes, and just, being around for a few years and then going on to the next hype. I've kind of been part of that, and that is very exhausting. It's conveyor belting. Even in hype topics, I work in AI, the most hype topic in the world right now. This is an evergreen market. There are people who've been working in AI for 30 years, plus years. There will be people working AI for 30 more years, probably even more. And it's really about understanding where the money is right now. And next year it might be somewhere else. So that's the first thing. Then I think going towards the attendees, yes, I've always had a really strict ICP mapping. In fact, when I joined HumanX, one of the things I was most impressed about how they built their first year's events is how rigid the ICP mapping is. We're a non-vertical specific, but job title specific conference. So our conference is designed for basically the boardroom or the management team of an event. And we believe that a challenge that a CFO has in manufacturing and retail in regards to AI are actually very similar. So the experience, and I use experience, not event, is designed to help these ICPs have a flow through the event, and and also to help find their tribe. I'd say, these big events, so 6,000 is not that big. Some are massive big, but even in an event with 6,000 people, it's so important for people to find their tribe. And we do that through a mixture of content and networking experiences. So yes, there are conference stages, but actually a lot of the value in content comes from the more intimate sessions, the more peer-led sessions, the more curated sessions. So we talked about meetings as well as shop talk. We come from the owner of HumanX was also was the one of the founders of shop talk. So we have a lot of the je ne sais quoi, you could say, from the pre-scheduled meetings. And then I think the other thing is around I say networking. So there's always big conversations around, do people come to events for content, for networking? Like, my belief is that obviously content is super critical. If you don't have content, you don't have speakers, you don't really have an event. But actually most of the value from the event comes from the networking experiences. So if you've just got a conference where you've got conference tracks from 9 till 5 and you're expecting people to sit there all day, good luck. So
I was going to add to that, or you're expecting them. There's such a solid, like content program, and then you're going, okay, so your opportunities for networking are during the breaks when actually you're trying to eat some food and whatever. I think that missing the opportunity to create those you call them soft. What did you call them, Sasha? Soft.
Well, kind of soft content.
Yes, soft content. To create those opportunities for people to create that content themselves. Then you're really missing a trick, just keeping it to the breaks, when actually breaks should be breaks, and opportunities to connect should be built in.
Also, I'd say for the speakers. Speakers, they love a keynote. Obviously, for a lot of people, that is part of their own, personal development journey as well, is to be on stage. But actually, when you have events where they have like-minded audiences that are similar levels to speakers, so probably more executive level events, they get their most value out of the Ask Me Anything sessions, or like the offstage things where they're kind of speaking to maybe 15 people that are in the audience getting feedback. When I've spoke to speakers that have really, really enjoyed events, it's not because the stage looked great and the room was packed. It
Mm.
was because of feedback and connection that came from their main stage talk.
That's such an interesting point. I mean, I did the content for a major tech show for a number of years, kind of launched the senior level content. And that was like major world-class tech speakers. And one of the things that I did was exactly that, which is people love speaking on a stage, but what they really want at that level is connections. And because I was bringing together the CTO of NASA and, people who've done really interesting things, I made it a kind of part of the value to the speakers is take a look at the other people, because also speakers aren't going to come in for the whole 2-3 days of a show. But I would say to them, take a look at the speaker lineup on the main stage and let me know who you want to meet. I'll make the connection for you. And so those connections, that added value, the stuff that happens off the stage, not in the room. And also, I still really believe in a curated speaker dinner for exactly that reason, to give them that opportunity to just sit around the table with, not the 300 speakers from a big show, but the 15 or 20 really interesting people, and then curate that evening really well so that people move around between courses, they get to speak to everyone. You might structure a few informal questions because, I mean, exactly as he says, that connections is what it's really about. Those human connections are what people really want. I can WhatsApp with somebody for 2 years, but when I actually meet them in person and sit down and have a conversation, it's a completely different quality of connection. And it leads to a completely different quality of outcomes as well. So,
Can I just
yeah.
say, can I come to one of your events, Sasha? Sitting down with all these top level speakers, just the curated ones for dinner. Oh, that's my idea of heaven. That sounds fantastic. Yeah, I mean, that's the sort of thing you don't get other places. I think we had a question which was, what differentiates excellent events from the good ones? And I think this is what you guys are touching on, is the fact that you're thinking more about the event experience. You're thinking about how you connect the speakers. I should think you can monetize your speaker dinner as well. So, we're talking to where the money movements are, Zach. So all of this comes together to deliver really amazing transformational events. Zach, just coming back to you, you talked about mapping the money in the market. I've not heard that before. I just wonder if you could explain to our viewers actually how you do that, nuts and bolts. Where do you start? How do you do it if you're new to that sort of process?
Yeah, I think anyone that's working in content production should also be a commercial person. And if you're in commercial events, obviously working in kind of association, really life science events. But content producers are creating commercial content. There's so many data sources out there these days. My first head of production used to make me read the FT for an hour every morning. And part of my job was topic generation, and topic generation came from spotting where things are happening, and diving in there, and then having validation calls with people to ask about it. But I think you can see in this day, I'm going back only 15 years, but it's changed a lot now. There are so many sources for investment news, partnership news. It's not just the FT now, but you can get this from ChatGPT now. And I think smart people, and I think people that work in content production are extremely smart to be able to do what they do, can just sense trends, and then the best thing to do is then dive into it and start speaking to people. And I think when I've worked on launch events before in markets that I didn't know, I'd probably go as far as saying most of the time the biggest revenue source for the types of sponsors, or where the revenue source was not where I thought it would be at the start of the event. That you kind of have to peel down those layers, and then you understand, okay, this is a big issue in the market that actually we can help solve. is not, it's not just the most obvious space. Otherwise, there would already be an event there, or there is not a need for an event there. So you're trying to uncover something that maybe even the market doesn't know yet. That's the hard part of it.
And I love the idea of you validating it as well with your network. So you can say, you've got this hunch, but let's just have a few calls to make sure I'm on the right track.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things that I think differentiates one of those kind of tier one type events, that, the idea is that when people see the content, they're like, whoa, how did you get in my head and know what keeps me awake at night? And that kind of quality of conference research. I mean, I started out, very much in that model. But that's what makes the difference. And when you look at a conference program where somebody's gone to a couple of sponsors or an advisory board of 2 or 3 of the same people who do it every year, the program feels flat. It's not energetic, because that amazing validated content is what brings people to the show, to the event, but also a combination of the people you bring as participants and the content is what makes the sponsors go, woohoo, you're totally on the money. So it's a kind of symbiotic relationship between the three, but the validation is absolutely vital. And I find it quite interesting. Like, I've done quite a lot of work in medical events with medical associations, and those are quite often driven by committees of people who decide what happens. And I think when you have committees of the same people, I mean, I do see the more progressive associations having next generation people involved in that, but when you just have the same people, you're actually just, it's an ever decreasing circle of content, because what you really want to find is that cool new thing that, like, no one's even written a blog post about yet. And that's what's magical about live events. I always leave a slot that I fill like a week out, because some super cool thing is going to happen, and you want to be able to reflect that.
Yeah, for sure. I'll tell you now, in HumanX, our main event is in April, and we know that some of the big things that are going to be talked about in April are not even out now. So yeah, for sure, agree on that. I'll tell you an anecdote. Something that happened to me about 5 years ago. So I was at a very large events company, that you can find out if you look at my LinkedIn, and I was portfolio director of the IoT series, Internet of Things. IoT was basically everything around connecting devices to the internet, to then get data from them. The portfolio was, it was a 10 million plus portfolio. It was growing rapidly, but then all of a sudden, everyone started talking about AI, because what was happening is you had the telecoms industry were leaning into the IoT industry because they were actually finding a way to use their network to connect these devices. And then once all these devices were connected, everyone was going, well, now we need to actually do something with that, and we need to actually apply intelligence to it to actually then be able to make steps toward AI. The company at the time had acquired a business in AI. So we were the IoT portfolio, and we were kind of sister portfolios with the AI portfolio. And I spent a good year pitching our MD that this portfolio in 2 years' time was gonna crash, because the hype was moving, and this portfolio was gonna grow rapidly. And it got to the point where we ended up bringing them together. Everyone loves a co-location, but we ended up bringing them together to kind of connect that and manage the sunsetting of the portfolio that I was running, which spurred on growth for the portfolio. Rather, and it just comes from like being, seeing what's happening in the market. And in this case, this was a large event, and everyone was telling us, well, you need AI, obviously. I'm going back, I think 6 or 7 years now. So that was probably one of my best commercial successes, was pitching my boss that the portfolio that I was running would decline over 2 years. And everyone wants growth, but actually I probably gained more respect for that than I did growing the portfolio in the 2 years before, to be honest.
Because it's the whole Wayne Gretzky thing, isn't it? You don't skate to where the puck is, you skate to where it's going, and you get there in advance. And you do that by being constantly on it. We had a question from Christy, and she says, how do you bridge the gap from event strategy to actual resource on the ground, the tech plan for the event vision. So how do you go from this big strategy to actually delivering the event? And I think it'd be good, Sasha, to talk about that through the lens of the hero's journey, because we haven't really unpacked that very much. And the hero's journey makes a lot of sense to me, but then I wonder how do you actually deliver it day to day at an event? How do you turn that high level strategy into actual activation activity?
Yeah, look, that's a really great question. I mean, and it's about, when I was creating this model, when I was writing the book, I sent it out to a few contemporaries of mine who were CEOs of big trade show companies, and they all came back to me and they were like, no, this is not our story, because we're the show owners and it's not about, it's about us, it's not about the participant. But actually what I see about some of those shows is that they dwindle because they've not got their finger on the pulse. So what does it mean in practice? Well, let's think about marketing, right? The majority of many people's marketing plans is email marketing still. Social media, word of mouth is, absolutely growing and vital, but people love solid email. So there is a massive difference between email that feels personal and feels like it's about me as the participant. So that's about tone of voice and how you write those emails. So I still get emails from people that say, we are delighted to announce the second phase of our speakers, and we've worked really hard at this, and you should come. I mean, right, that's all about me, the show owner. But when I get those emails that say, we know the three big things that keep you awake at night are, well, in every single sector I talk to about right now, what is the impact of AI on, but when I get an email that says, we understand that these are your three biggest issues, and we have put together a phenomenal program that answers your questions. Here are the speakers. Here are some videos from the speakers who are going to be talking about the things that you're worrying about. So that's one example, how to kind of operationalize this idea that you want to put the participants at the heart of it. The marketing needs to be about the participants. People used to talk about the 80-20 rule. It's 80% content, great stuff about why it helps, why it works for people, and 20%, call to action, book here. I don't even know if that's true anymore. I mean, also, there's a whole thing about new generations of attendees who are tech savvy, social media, they want authentic. They don't want the fake looking marketing with that tone of voice that says we are delighted and we are the market leading. All of that's over. All of that is like the death knell for real engagement and consistent engagement and retention of new generations. So I think there's definitely something about it feeling authentic. If you look at how social media works now, it's not slick. I mean, my 17-year-old does my social media and he makes me look authentic in a way that if I hired the social media company, they might not. And I think that's another message for that. And then I think the other thing about putting the participant at the heart of it is just making it really personal. And that can be everything from, so when you go to a big show, 6,000, 20,000, 50,000, actually it can be really stressful for people. You land in the airport, you don't know where you're going, you've not been there before. And the thing that I've seen is the most successful and capable people somehow, when they turn into the attendee or the speaker, just need a bit more hand holding than they do in everyday life. That's just humanity. So I love it when big shows have all the welcome stuff at the airport. They've got really great signage, so you know where you're going. It's easy to find. You can get your badge at the airport. It's really easy, to get a bus or get a taxi because you're putting the participant first, right? It's easier for you to have the welcome desk at the show because you don't have to have two locations, but it's better for the participants. And also I saw something else that was a really personal end to a big show. I spoke at IBTM in November and they did a really amazing thing on the second day that I had never seen before. And it's so simple and I love it. So obviously second day slightly dwindles in a show. You try and put some really big name people on at the end, but that's how it goes. So the show was closing at 5 o'clock. From about 3:30, the whole show team was standing by the exit escalator and they were clapping. I heard this clapping. I was like having a coffee with someone and talking about something. And we heard this clapping and I went to have a look. the whole show, a team of like 40 or 50 people, were standing there clapping out all the people leaving, saying thank you. And I think the welcome's really important, however we do that. But the goodbye and the thank you, brings that narrative to a close. And it's such an easy thing to do. And people are like, thanks for coming. Bye. Have a good trip back. Easy, simple, but really personal. It put the participant right at the heart of the story. So just a couple of examples.
That's fantastic. Yeah,
I'm
really,
going to
really
add
good.
to that. I was one of those people. I worked on IBTM, and I was one of those people clapping at the bottom of the escalators on the way out.
Oh, that was you all along.
Yeah, mortified sometimes, but like you say, it means that those people that you've met, those speakers that you're saying bye to, for the sales team, they're clients who are packing up and leaving. It's that last chance for a hug and to thank them for making the show happen. Because as you say, as organisers, we're kind of we're putting it on, but really without the people who are bringing all the various parts, it doesn't happen. So yeah.
Can I just make one comment about, I think the question also mentioned around tech and like the tech plan. I think because what we do is we create concepts, right? So none of us are creative. None of us have a physical product. An event is creating a concept, and with that, so much time and energy gets thought onto, who are the speakers, what are the tracks, the stuff that is creating that helps us create a visual concept to help us sell. The reality when it comes to the delivery side and then the tech side is that then moves into the second phase. I've got an event that people want to come to. Oh shit, I now need to go and deliver it. And the reality is that most people have this as an afterthought, and event tech in general, generalizing a bit here, is really nuts and bolty. It's kind of like paper, kind of cardboard and stuff together, and that creates a really, really not unified, not seamless experience for attendees. And so often what happens is events are scaling, you need to add things on, you need to do this. And then actually the more you do that, the more complicated you make it for your attendees. And then actually then they end up having a not great experience. So yeah, I've seen it loads of times. I've also been part of that. And it can really backfire.
And I guess the other thing just to close on is, say you create these amazing experiences, tech-enabled experiences, and what we're really trying to do is create a bit of advocacy, aren't we? We're trying to make our events remarkable so that your participants will tell other people how good it is to get them to come back, because obviously it's 5 times less expensive to keep an existing customer than it is to get a new one. So can we just touch on advocacy? Because we talked about that in our prep call, and it's something I really want to stress, and we've not brought it up on any of our webinars before. So the power of advocacy, how are you guys either consulting or in your actual events, how are you telling people to get more advocacy in your events so that your participants share and, sing great things about what your event's all about? What are you doing day to day?
I mean, I think everyone's doing, the sharing that they're going and there's I think there's not much to say there. For me, I think advocacy comes from if you're having the right people in the room. Either they are shouting about the fact that they were in a like-minded community where they couldn't be elsewhere. Davos, that's everyone that goes to Davos is posting about because they're at Davos. It's like an honor to be there, if you say so. Or the other side of it is the FOMO. So like at HumanX, I think the two things that I've seen at HumanX that drive advocacy is one, just that the speakers are just next level. You will not see a speaker faculty like this anywhere in the world, and therefore the speakers then become big advocates because the speaker that will be in the middle of the page at HumanX might be at the top of the page at another event, and they're okay that they're in the middle of the page because they're around all these like-minded people. And the other one for us is media. There was a huge focus around building media. The team would do an amazing job. For the event in April, there's already 350 of the top media confirmed 4 months out, which media is normally the last 3-4 weeks. And so what happened last year, there was so much news about HumanX that if you weren't there, you want to be there. And so that's driven advocacy. The other thing I say is in my last event, it was a much more regional event. So it was based in Amsterdam. It was the Dutch tech event. And so word of mouth was one of our biggest marketing drivers. And it goes back to what I said earlier about the startup scaling. And so if, for example, we used to really try and advocate if a startup had met their investor at the event, very, 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 very simple. And then we used to get other startups coming to the event because they wanted to meet their investors. It was quite transactional in that way, I'd say.
Sasha,
I
what do
mean,
you
I
think?
think, I'm with Zach. I mean, I think the advocacy thing is cool, and it's vital, and it's about creating opportunities for participants, delegates as well as speakers, to really talk about, the event they're at. I have Professor Brian Cox keynote at an event for me a couple of years ago. I did not know that in hiring him, I would effectively end up being his bodyguard. So as he came off stage, like 1,000 people wanted a selfie with Brian. And so I ended up like managing this thing where like there's not going to be individual selfies, everybody hold up their phone, Brian's going to stand on the stage. That went like totally viral, that like there were however many hundred people could squeeze into that photo. I did something at another event where the keynote speaker came with her dog, and so we made a badge. We made a badge for the dog and we put it on the dog, and I got my photographer straight away, because I think the media piece is absolutely vital, and I think it's a real lost opportunity to be thinking about media 3 to 4 weeks out of the show. The media plan needs to be done right up front. As you're thinking about those impacts, you want to be thinking about, well, what are the stories we want people to tell? What do we want our sponsors to think? What do we want next year's delegates to think? And Bill, I knew when I put this badge for Poppy the dog on and got my photographer that it would like break the internet, and I made sure it was behind all the branding. So like I'm always building those media opportunities into the event design, and also I will create a cool place to go get, which lots of people do now. Like I've seen stuff at Cannes where like WhatsApp have branded ice cream, and people create these opportunities effectively to create word of mouth advocacy moments, because what you really want is super fans, right?
Yeah.
You want the people who come back every year. First of all, you want them to increase for that retention, but you want them, it's so much more authentic for them to be going out and saying, oh my God, you can't believe what an amazing time I had, and I heard Tim Berners-Lee or Brian Cox, as opposed to you saying, we're delighted to let you know that we have, So I think that super fan advocacy piece is increasingly, as we have new generations of attendees, going to be the way that marketing goes. And it's exciting.
Yeah, let's generate more super fans. Why not? That's great. I love it. Okay, I'm going to come to each of you and ask you how people can come and get more info from you and kind of find out all about you. In the meantime, there's the next webinar. Sign up for it. Scan the QR code, people. Zach, how can people get in touch with you and find out more about what you're up to?
Add me on LinkedIn, Zach Butler. If you're in Amsterdam, come say hi. I have to come back to London as well. So, and if you're working in AI, come to HumanX in San Francisco in April. So we'll see you there.
It's going to be a big one. Abby, how can people find out all about you?
Yep, LinkedIn as well. You can reach me at Grip, of course. So abby.cannons@grip.events if you have any questions.
And Sasha, what about you? Well, first of all, people got to go and buy your book because it's bloody brilliant.
Thank you so much. So I'm on LinkedIn. Thank you, Abby. I am Sasha at thechiefeventofficer.co, and you can sign up to my newsletter and you can talk to me about coaching, training, and consulting. And it has been a real privilege to have this cool conversation this afternoon.
Oh, the privilege is all mine. You guys have been amazing. It's been great. I've learned a lot, actually, and we've covered so many new things we haven't covered in other webinars. So thank you to my amazing panelists, and thank you to everyone who has tuned in today. And we will see you on the next one. Thank you very much. Cheers, guys. Thank you for your help. See you soon. Bye.